Okay, let's unpack this. We're diving deep into a topic that, it touches nearly every family.
Oh, absolutely. And it carries so much emotional weight.
It really does. Fall prevention.
Yeah.
But we're not just talking about, grabbing a walker or doing a few leg lifts.
No, not at all.
We're going to use this really sharp analytical lens, behavioral gerontology, to reveal the predictable patterns behind instability and then outline 10 really actionable strategies.
It's such a crucial perspective shift because I think most people view a fall as this sudden, random event, an accident.
Right.
But our sources make it really clear. Falls are almost never random. They follow a trajectory of predictable, observable clues.
Absolutely. The source material had that great example of Mrs. L. She starts showing these tiny, almost imperceptible clues. A little hesitation at the edge of a rug, gripping a doorframe just a bit too hard.
Small stumbles she catches just in time.
Exactly. And those are the behavioral antecedents that just get missed or, dismissed as, oh, she's just being careful.
And that's really our mission today, to stop treating falls as an outcome and start treating them as a behavior that can be influenced.
Okay, so how do we do that?
By using the principles of behavioral gerontology, which I know sounds a bit academic.
A little bit.
But it's just a way of understanding the interaction between aging individuals, their actions, and their environment. We want to get beyond just awareness and into clear, actionable, and compassionate intervention.
So this deep dive is structured around modifying 4 key areas, kind of moving from the outside in.
Right. The environment, routines, cognitive load, and then the reinforcement history, which is critical.
That's where the resistance comes in. Okay, so let's start with the physical setting. It feels like the quickest way to get a win.
It is. We're starting with what behavioral science calls antecedent intervention.
An antecedent being.
Just what happens immediately before the behavior. If the environmental trigger is risky, the probability of an unsafe action goes way up. So our goal is to reduce those high-risk triggers.
And this brings us right to a really surprising insight. We all think they need more strength training. But the sources really emphasize lighting before strength. Why is that?
Because a fall is so often a failure of perception, not just of muscle.
I see.
If you can't accurately perceive the height of a step or the edge of a rug, your brain gets faulty input. It forces an unstable compensation. So visibility it's foundational stability.
So a blind spot from poor lighting can cause a fall no matter how strong your legs are.
Exactly, which is why the first set of strategies focuses on light. Motion sensor lights are huge, especially for those nighttime trips.
Night lights everywhere. Hallways, bathrooms, kitchen.
Everywhere. And the type of light matters. Warm, diffused bulbs, not those harsh fluorescents that create glare and confusing shadows.
Okay, so that handles the visibility antecedent. Strategy 1 is about removing physical trip triggers. But as you said, it's not just the rug, it's the habit around the rug.
That's the behavioral lens. If the routine is walking through a cluttered hallway at 3 a.m. for a glass of water, the whole pathway is the problem. You can't just hope they remember to step over the obstacle.
You have to change the path or the routine itself.
Precisely. And this ties into strategy 5, simplifying stability spots. This is all about decision overload.
I found this part fascinating. The idea that too much choice is actually a bad thing.
It is that tiny pause where the brain is deciding, okay, do I grab the banister, the door frame, or the back of the chair? That hesitation is a moment of instability.
So what's the recommendation?
Simplicity, clarity. Focus on one sturdy, obvious anchor point for each key transition. Maybe one grab bar by a door, one tactile guide for a long hallway. Less clutter means more predictable movement. The cognitive load drops and stability goes up.
So we've set the stage, literally. We've changed the environment. So where do we go from there?
Well, now we have to look at the movement within that space, the actual tasks people are doing.
Okay, so modifying the demands of the tasks themselves.
Exactly. And that brings us to strategy 6, which the sources call recognizing problem furniture.
Problem furniture. Tell me more.
So think about a chair that's too low, or a couch that's way too deep and soft. The person standing up is forced into these unsafe compensations.
Right. They lurch forward or try to use their arms to vault themselves up.
Exactly. The task itself requires this huge, unsafe effort. But if you raise the chair height or firm up the cushion, you fundamentally lower the effort required. You've made the task safer by design.
You're removing the reason for the unsafe movement. It's reducing the energy deficit.
Precisely. And speaking of high-risk tasks, we have to talk about the #1 fall location.
The bathroom.
The bathroom. Strategy 9, proactive bathroom modification. And the key word there is proactive. Do not wait for a fall to upgrade the space.
Why is it such a perfect storm for falls?
Well, you have water, slippery surfaces, confined spaces, and the need to twist and reach while you're wet, often in the middle of the night when you're groggy.
Yeah.
It's a combination of almost every risk factor.
So what are the absolute must-have fixes? The things that create the biggest behavioral change?
A shower chair is non-negotiable. It reduces that prolonged standing, non-slip mats, obviously, stable, professionally mounted grab bars.
And the handheld shower head.
A handheld shower head is key. It lets the person stay seated and stable. And, crucially, the towel has to be within easy reach. No twisting. The second you force someone who is wet to twist or take an unstable step, the risk just skyrockets.
Now, before we leave the bathroom, you mentioned an overlooked hazard, a critical one.
Yes, the number one overlooked hazard is the bathroom threshold.
That little lip.
That tiny raised lip where the flooring changes. It's the perfect height to catch a shuffling foot that doesn't lift all the way. The foot trips, the body goes forward, and there's zero chance of recovery.
So what's the fix for that?
If you can't eliminate it, you have to make it highly visible with contrasting tape.
Okay, so this is where it gets, for me, really interesting. We're moving from the static environment to dynamic behavior, reshaping routines.
Yes, and we know most falls happen during transitions. Standing up, turning, stepping between different surfaces.
These are the moments where momentum changes.
Right, and the brain has to quickly recalculate balance. So strategy 3 is about replacing that rushed, chaotic transition with predictable, rehearsed cues.
And this is where we get into chaining and stimulus control.
That's the behavioral connection. Chaining just means we break a complex behavior down into small, manageable steps.
Like getting out of a chair and turning.
Exactly. And we use stimulus control, a simple verbal cue to signal the start of the next safe step. It overrides that urge to just rush the whole action.
So give me an example. What does that sound like in practice?
So instead of letting the person just lunge forward, the cue creates a measured pace. Something like pause, hands on the armrest. Then you wait. Okay, stand when you're ready. Once they're standing and stable, now take 2 steps forward. Then, now turn slowly.
So you're giving the body and brain time to stabilize at each stage.
You're replacing one high-risk rush with a low-risk controlled chain of actions.
And that sequence helps fight that reflexive rush. Which brings us to strategy 4, which is directly about why people rush in the first place.
Reinforcing slow, safe movements.
Yeah, and the social observation here is so important. People often rush because they're self-conscious, or they're trying to be polite to the caregiver who's waiting.
That is the core of the problem. That unsafe speed is unintentionally reinforced. If the person moves slowly and the caregiver seems frustrated,
Or rushes over to help them when they start to hurry.
right, then the senior learns that speed or vulnerability gets attention. The very behavior we want to eliminate is accidentally being rewarded.
So we have to strategically shift that reinforcement.
Exactly. If they rush, you don't reinforce it with approval or even attention. You actively praise the desired safe action.
So the language becomes something like, thank you for taking your time, that was so steady.
That was so strong. You're praising the process, not the speed. You're building a new reinforcement history that favors stability.
And this leads into strategy 7, building balance routines, but not formal workouts.
No, this is about habit shaping, finding micro moments throughout the day.
So where can we weave these in?
You connect the balancing action to an existing, predictable routine, so it becomes automatic. For instance, practicing a 1-second stand just before you fully sit down.
Like a little mini squat.
Right. Or shifting weight from one foot to the other while you brush your teeth. Practicing a slow, controlled turn while you're waiting for the microwave. These little micro moments build procedural memory without the anxiety of a formal class.
Okay, let's pivot now to the mental side. This is where we talk about cognitive load and,
Yeah.
well, the thing that trips up so many people, caregiver resistance.
It's so important. Cognitive function is deeply linked to physical stability. So strategy 10 is about preventing cognitive overload. Falls spike when the brain is overwhelmed.
And we overwhelm it all the time with complex commands like grab your walker, turn around, and let's go.
That's a recipe for error. You're asking the brain to manage an executive function task sequencing 3 commands and a complex physical task at the same time.
So the solution is simplification.
Single commands with measured pauses. Stand up. Pause. Let them get stable. Now turn. Pause. Now walk with me. You manage the processing demand so their safety isn't compromised by mental overwhelm.
This issue of control feeds right into those real-world caregiver concerns.
Yeah.
What do you do when dad refuses the walker?
Or mom refuses the shower chair.
Yeah, the resistance feels so personal. But the behavioral analysis says it's almost always about loss.
That's what's so fascinating. The resistance isn't irrational. To that person, the walker doesn't represent safety. It represents loss. Loss of independence, loss of their self-image.
The safety measure itself becomes what you call an aversive stimulus.
An aversive stimulus, so they actively avoid it. Forcing it just increases resistance and makes it more likely they won't use it when you're not there.
So how do you apply shaping to this?
You reintroduce the tool in tiny, positive steps. It's never all or nothing. You start small. Can you just hold the walker while you stand up? Then you praise that. Then, how about using the walker just to the end of the hallway? 2 steps with the walker gets genuine praise. Then 5 steps. You're shaping the behavior by reinforcing the successful interaction with the tool. You're building a new, positive history with it.
And circling back to irritation with help. If force increases resistance, how do you manage that friction when you're just trying to assist?
You have to maximize their sense of control. So instead of the caregiver initiating, you create routines the senior initiates.
What does that look like?
Instead of saying, let me help you up now, you could say, when you're ready to stand, just put your hand on my arm. That small shift preserves their dignity and perceived competence. It lowers irritation dramatically.
Finally, let's connect that high-risk factor of nighttime wandering back to the environment.
Nighttime disorientation is a huge failure of antecedent control. They wake up in the dark, they're groggy, the environment's unfamiliar because they can't see it.
So what do we do?
We use predictable winding down routines to anchor their sleep cycle, and we use guiding lights, those motion sensors we started with, to create a predictable, safe path to the bathroom. You reduce the cognitive load of, where am I? And the physical risk of a misstep.
So what does this all mean? We started by saying falls are not random. They are predictable behavioral outcomes. And when we gently and consistently adjust the environment, the routines, the cognitive load,
And the reinforcement history.
we get something much bigger than just safety. Movement becomes confident, predictable, and that preserves dignity and independence.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the traditional approach to fall prevention often feels like a trade-off for the patient. You trade your mobility for safety or your dignity for assistance.
That's a terrible trade-off.
It is. But these behavioral strategies succeed because they shape safety while also supporting the person's perception of their own competence and control.
That is the critical distinction.
It really is. And it raises an important question for you, the listener, to really think about. When you're implementing any safety measure, are you designing it for pure clinical safety? Or are you accidentally designing a situation that triggers shame or loss or dependency?
Because that second approach,
The latter approach, no matter how well-intentioned it is, guarantees resistance. And at the end of the day, it will fail to protect the person you care about.
focus on those small reinforcing steps, those environmental cues. You are now equipped with the behavioral script you need to reshape safety and dignity in someone's daily life. We hope this deep dive helps you move forward with confidence.